Good morning, Rabbi Isai. We're holding by the Mishnah Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. Brand new Mishnah, Rabbi Isai. Eivorim be'eivorim balibumim. We had this. We spoke about it. If there's a mix-up between an oila, right? Put it, you pencil. We're talking about an oila over here. You have the limbs of an oila with the limbs of another oila that are a mum. If you put on top of the mizbeach one head, you went against the rules, you did it. You didn't ask, you didn't know the halacha, you put it on. We're going to assume that the one that's on the mizbeach is the balmum. And therefore, you're allowed to continue bringing all the other heads. What if you put all the four legs of one animal on top of the mizbeach? Yikrivu kol hakarayim. All the legs that you have over there, all the oila legs, you're allowed to put onto the mizbeach. Let me ask you a question. What if you don't put all four legs on the mizbeach? You only put 3 out of the 4 on the mizbeach. Then what's the halacha? It says karayim. You're supposed to put all 4 legs of one. If all 4 legs of one went on, like the head, put one head on. I could put all the heads on. I put all the legs on. I put the legs of one on, all 4. I could put the legs of all the animals over there. This trick that Reb Eliezer says that if one head went onto the mizbeach, we're going to assume that all heads are kosher. Why? Because the one that went on the mizbeach is the one that's treif. We're going to assume. We're making an assumption. We're going to go mamish lekula. The one that went on was treif. Oh my Reb Elazar, lo yichshe Reb Eliezer shnayim. We had the sugi also. When Reb Eliezer said you put it on the mizbeach, we assume that it's the one that's treif, is because he's putting on 2 by 2, 2 at a time. Aval echad loy, put one on by itself, not why? Because when you hold in your hand 2, says Rashi, then one of them is for sure kosher. And if one of them is for sure kosher, he says a vart like, then there's a migu that the other one is also kosher. I would have said, simpler, at least one of them is kosher. You look at each one, it could be the other one. No, that's not what he says. He says a little bit of a vart of a migu. All the way at the end of the mission, it says that if you have one left, do not put it onto the mizbeach, because that's the one that's the bad one. You, Reb Eliezer, are going on a limb and you're saying that the first one was the bad one. We're going to say the last one is the bad one. So even if you put 10 on the mizbeach, the last one that's left, do not put on. It might be the bad one. And what does Reb Eliezer hold? That you're allowed to put the last one on, but it's not 2. You're only putting 1 and 1. Let's see over here what he did. Here, 2 heads. We're not going to go through the whole thing. Maybe it's not so accurate. That's the first one. That's how the Gemara understood. 1, you put 1 on, and the Gemara says no, it has to be 2 at a time. So what do? Reb Eliezer over here seems to be saying they could put 1 at a time. What does 1 mean? Don't take it literally 1. Zug echad. It's 1. Yeah, it's 1. 1 pair, because we're talking about pairs. Zok the Mishnah. Dam shenisar b'mayim im yesh b'maris dam kosher. It goes by the look. So if you have blood that you're supposed to do hazah on the mizbeach with, and it looks like blood, even though that you mixed water into it, it's kosher. Even though you might have a majority of water, but it looks like good blood, nice thick red blood, kosher. Here's the whole sugi right here, this line, and it's an amazing thing. Nis'arev biyayin. What do you do if red blood mixes with red wine? Now, you can't look at it. You can't see. You could put 20 gallons of red wine into 1 gallon of blood. It'll still look like blood. How are you going to see? They have the same color. They're both red. So says the Mishnah one word here, and that's the word of the sugya. Royin oisoi kilu humayin. Royin. Royin means we pretend. We pretend that the wine is water, and if you put 10 gallons of water into 1 gallon of blood, it will dilute the blood, and it'll be no good for hazah. So we're going to pretend that the 10 gallons of wine is actually 10 gallons of water. If you put 1 gallon of water with 1 gallon of blood, you won't be able to differentiate. So if you put 1 gallon of red wine together with 1 gallon of blood, it's okay. We have to do a ryan. We have to go take this object because it's so similar. That's the whole sugya. If two objects that are very similar, red wine and red blood, we're going to take the red wine and pretend it's something else, not red wine. What would happen if this was something completely different? If this was a different liquid? In general, a different liquid, it goes by what it looks like, and there's a certain amount. So we're gonna see what that is with water, and then we're gonna do the same thing with wine. What about nisar b'dam behema or b'dam achaya? You take blood that's not appropriate for the mizbech at this point. You have a behema from the shlachtais. You took blood from outside the mizbech. Outside of it wasn't a carbon. Chulin, not chutz. Chulin. So what do? Now you have blood of a chaya mixed in with the blood of a behema. Royin oisoi ki'ilu humayim. You pretend, once again, you have red chaya blood, red behema blood, got mixed in. So let's see how much chaya blood. Let's pretend that the chaya blood is water. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, ein dam mevatel dam. There's a few halachas today that are just gonna they're going to amaze you, actually. This is one of them. Says Rabbi Yehuda, if you have 25 gallons of chaya blood, venison blood, and 1 drop, you hear this? Rabbi say 1 drop of kosher blood, and that 1 drop is in the kli with the 25 gallons of chaya blood, you could do zrika with it. We're talking about chulun azara is that your issa to bring chulun to azara. Over here, we're talking about blood mixed with blood that you cannot be mevatel min b'minoi. It's the same thing. They're both bloods, and you can't be mevatel one. So it's mutter for you to do the mitzvah of azah on the mizbech with that kind of ratio, 1,000,000 to 1. 1 drop of blood with 1,000,000 chaya blood. You can do this rika. Nisari b'dam psulim. But what if the blood is not that of a chaya, but that of something puzzle, such as blood of pigul? Pigul happens with a machshava during one of the 4 actions of shchita, kabbalah, halacha, or zrika. 1 out of the 4. It doesn't have to be all 4. During the kabbalah, he's thinking to himself, either that he's going to eat this animal outside the allotted time in 3-4 days from now, or he's thinking that he's going to do the zrika outside the allotted time. That's 2 ways to do zrika, to do pigul. So the blood becomes puzzle, and it's mixed in with kosher blood, non-kosher and kosher blood mixed together. What do? Yishapech la'ama. Yishapech la'ama. Where's the ama? Here we go. This is the ama. You pour it into like the drink system of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, does Rabbi Yehuda argue on this? Rabbi Yehuda says, dam is not mevatel dam. What do you say? L'chayra, you would say it's okay. L'chayra. The Tana of the Mishnah says that you have to get rid of it. It's more of a gzeira than anything else. But dam atamtzis. What's dam atamtzis? We're supposed to do zrika with dam nefesh. Dam nefesh is the initial squirts of the blood, as long as this animal is alive. When Reb Weissfish was here, we have a good one of Reb Weissfish. You all know what he looks like. He said that he could differentiate it. A good shaykh could see the difference in the color. There's a difference in color. Dam nefesh is when the thing is still alive, it's still moving around. Dam tamtzis is he went to sleep. See that? It's supposed to be a little darker. The dam nefesh is a little darker. So, if you're using dam tamtzis, which is no good, for zrika, and it's mixed in with regular blood, you shavach la'ama, get rid of it. Reb Eli Daf says, I don't have the gzeira, it's okay. Another halacha, if he didn't go ask the Rav what he should do with this blood, the blood that the Mishnah says he should pour it into the Amma, kosher. The whole thing is not pasul mid'oraisa, it's pasul mid'rabbanan, it's a gzeira. So he did it, fine, it works. Omer Reb Chiya Barabba, Omer Reb Yochanan. Leishon Rel Shenaflu Mayim L'Toich Dam. If water spills into the blood, then we have this idea that it's kosher. If it looks like blood, then it's still kosher. That's because you have good blood, and you introduce another liquid to it, and that liquid becomes part of the blood, and memela, it's kosher. Aval nofel dam l'toich mayim rishon bottle. This is blood. So we go like this. I pour a little blood into here. You don't really see anything. So now this blood that fell into the water, bevutel. I'm going to have to pour a lot of it. Bottle. Each time I pour, it's bottle. It goes into the water, it becomes bottle. Now, look what just happened. It started becoming red. But the problem is that in order for it to become red, I had to use the blood that was already inside this glass. And when it was in the glass, it was bottle. Eventually, when I get the final amount of blood in there, not wine, this is a bottle of blood. I get the final blood in there, it turned colors and it's a good color. It's too late. You want to use blood that was already bottled before. It's not chayziv in air, it doesn't wake up and become blood. Once it's bottled, it's finished. It's kachim. It's dachui. It's pushed off. So meila, avol nofel dam l'toich mayim. If you have blood that fell into water, rishon in bottle. Omer apapa. Ule'inyan kisui enoikein. Lefi shein dichu b'mitzvos. This idea that we just said applies to kachim, to blood, kachim. But when it comes to a mitzvah, you don't push off a mitzvah. Mitzvah will awaken. So what happened? Here, we have a little video here. Geschmack.
Volg gaat waar ze met de kinderen willen, maar als schieten.
Each one that goes in becomes bottled. That's what I just showed you. Okay, but when it comes to chaya, let's move this to the side. When it comes to chaya, it's different. Why? A chaya, chayziv in air, it comes back to life. So here we have a blood that's alive and well. Now it gets tired, goes to sleep. When you put it in, they're sleeping. They're sleeping. Each one is asleep. You put the final one in, they all come back to life. So Kisi Adam is only for a chaya, like a deer, or that chaya that we just saw there, and a bird. A behema doesn't have Kisi Adam. So when each drop of blood becomes bottle, it does become bottle. I'm asking to you, one drop of blood in a bowl of water is going to become bottle. When we get enough blood put together, they come back to life. When it comes to like this color, whatever the color of blood is, then they reawaken. That's the word. Reawaken to perform the mitzvah. You're asking what's the difference? The difference is you cannot push off a mitzvah. Kisi Adam is a mitzvah. There's no dichuy in a mitzvah. There is dichuy by kachim. So if this was not the blood of a chaya for kisi, this is the blood of a behema for zrikas Adam. Zrikas Adam is kachim and it's nidcha. Hapigul v'anoisar. Let me pull this out. This Rabbi Yisai is a kazayis of noisar. This is a kazayis of noisar. Says Rish Lakish, a fascinating halacha b'emes. You're not going to believe this. Adim see you about to eat this. They say, listen, if you eat this, you're going to get malchus. They see you about to eat this. If this is noisar, you're going to get malchus. This is pigul, you're going to get malchus. And you go ahead and you eat both of them together. Says Rish Lakish, they can't give you malchus. You're going to get a big oynish and shemayim. Hashem will take care of you. But Bezin can't do anything to you. Why? Because when you chew these two, this is what happens in your mouth. It becomes marbleized. It becomes, there's a mix. And at a certain point, one of these two is going to be more than the other. You can't have exactly a perfect mix in your mouth. One of them is going to create like this ball right over here, which one is more, the white or the blue? I don't know. The purple. I don't know. One of them is going to be 51% and the other one is going to be 49%. And the one that's 51% is the roiv, and the roiv is going to be mevatel the miut. Even when it comes to an isser, we're talking about two isurim, one is going to overcome the other, and we don't know which one it is. Memela. Another story. Rabbi said, listen to this story. There's two men over here. Two men. There's a kid that was adopted. And they come and they tell the kid, one of these two men is your dad. We don't know who. Now he has all this built up anger his entire life. He always wanted to meet this guy that gave him up for adoption. As soon as he finds out, he takes out a stick. And he's like, He said, no, he's your father. So he gives him a whack on the head. And then he goes to the next guy. He says, no, he's your father. Whack on the head. Does he get a einish or not? Could we punish him? Could we give him malchus? The answer is, it's asra safek. Exactly. That's called asra safek. When they said don't hit him, he's your father, they didn't know 100%. They said don't hit him, he's your father, they didn't know 100%. Together, one of them is the father 100%. But you don't get a punishment for that. The chewing wasn't. It's the swallowing, putting in the mouth, you don't get an isser. And at one point, one of them overcame the other. Had we known which one, had he said that, the 51% is the noisar, and that's the one that's going to overcome, fine. But they didn't know. So says the Gemara, Hapigul v'hanoisar, they take out the word tame because you don't really want three here. You want two. Shibalolon zebozeh b'acholon. He ate them both, mixed up, he chewed them up, and he swallowed. Potter. It's impossible that one shouldn't have the roiv over the other and be mevatel the other. And therefore, they couldn't give him the proper hasra. Shema min otlas. You see three things from here. I thought it was fascinating that if you look around in Shas, you'll be very hard-pressed to find a place where it says Shema mino arba or Shema mino shtayim. It's 90% of the time, I'm not a bucky in Shas, but I don't remember. Shema mino yisur mevatim zeh. This whole idea is because this 51% overcomes the 49%, and the roiv is mevatel even in Isser. You say bittul b'roiv not just in mitzvahs, in zrikas hadam, in kisui hadam. You say roiv even when you have two yisur, you say one of them goes away because it's the miut. Ushma min onoisen tam b'roiv lav deraisa. There's two things that we always discuss. That's roiv, but there's also what it tastes like, which is echad b'shishim. Shishim, what's shishim? Batul b'shishim. That there's no flavor. Because flavor, even 1 in 60, 1/60th will ruin it. So, we're going to get there in a second. Over here, you have two different things. You have a noisar and a pigol. Can't you taste the noisar? Can't you taste the pigol? Why can't you taste a little bit of the noisar? And if you could taste a little bit of the noisar, even though the pigol is 51%, the noise is 49%, but I could taste the 49%. I taste it, that's it. It should become usher. What's the obvious answer to that? That's what Arya said. What's the obvious answer? Don't say Arya. What's the obvious answer? We're talking about pigol and noisar. They taste the same exact. They're both pieces of meat. So you can't taste it. We're talking about a situation where you can't taste it, then you go with the majority. Ushmamino hasra safek lo yishma hasra. This whole halacha only goes according to Rish Lakish, and Rish Lakish himself always says throughout Shas that asra safek lo yishma hasra, that if I don't know what I'm warning you about, I don't know which isra you're about to do, that's not a hasra. Masiv Rava. Also isa min chitim umin oiriz. Here you have a guy who has a gluten issue. He only eats gluten free. So he's making matzah maybe for Pesach. So he makes a rice cake, but he wants to be yoytze the mitzvah, so he throws in a little flour at the end. But he wants it to be mainly rice. So he makes a whole concoction of wheat and rice, flour and rice. If it tastes a little bit like challah, like I say challah, I mean like bread, then you're chayiv in challah. Then you'd have to be mafresh challah. You're not mafresh challah on rice cakes. Even though the majority of this thing is rice. So over here, how come the majority of the chita doesn't come and the majority of the rice outdo the wheat, the flour, and say that you're potter from challah? Says the Gemara, you're right, midrabanan. The only chiyuv challah that we have here is the rabbanan. You're really not chayiv in challah because the majority is rice. Says the Gemara, I thought you were going to tell me that, but think about the end of it. It says, this is a perfect matzah. So how come, if it's only the rabbanan, how come you could use it for matzah? You take a lot of rice and a little bit of flour and you're eating matzah on Pesach and you eat yaitza. Says the Gemara, the answer that I said before, Rish Lakish's halacha that you take these two things and you put it in your mouth, and one is mevatel the other, they taste the same. They're both pieces of meat. One is a noisar, one is a pigol. But they're both two types of meat, and therefore I use the roiv, which is a kula. Like a little bit more is mevatel. But when you have two types of food, you have wheat and rice, then it goes by flavor, which is much, much less. The flavor destroys it. It's like a little, just a hint of wheat, you chayv and challah. Says the Gemara. Question. This is an important question. This is basically the question of until the end of the Amud. We have two options. When you have food, you have two options to be mevatel it. How do you nullify food? Either with the majority, 51% versus 49%, could nullify, one could overcome the other, like in this case. The pigol overcomes the noisar, because one is 51%, one is 49%, or by taste. That's the Gemara, a bomb question. If they look the same or taste the same, they taste the same, two pieces of meat. So in this case, you don't go by taste because they taste the same. So what do you go by? Majority. So I need a tremendous amount to overcome this thing. But if I would go by taste, what would it be? A tiny amount. What did we say in the Mishnah? Think about this. This idea of royin. What does royin mean? If I have red wine and red blood, I don't know what to do. They're the same. So what do? I pretend. I pretend that one of them is not wine. I pretend the wine is water. And then I start going, if it was water, what's the halach in water? How much water do I need to nullify this blood? So when you have two pieces of meat, ask the Gemara, why don't they use the same concept, royin? Pretend one piece of meat is rice, a different food, and how much of that food do I need to taste it? Why am I going with majority? Do a pretend. Roya means let's pretend. In our Mishnah, we see the idea of pretending. And it works with coloration, and it works with flavor. It works with everything. When I have two items that are similar, red blood and red wine, what do? I can't differentiate. You know what I do? I pretend one of them is a different item. And if it's a different item, we know what the shear is. It's to dilute the blood, however much it takes to dilute. You're right, red wine is not going to be able to dilute the blood even 1,000,000 gallons because they're both the same color. Pretend one of them is different. So now when it comes to flavor, let's do the same exact thing. I have a piece of steak that's 1 pound. I have another piece of steak that's 1 pound, and they weigh and they taste the same. Take the steak, take one steak out. Instead of saying, oh, you need a majority, which is nothing, which is a lot, I'm sorry, you have to do a lot. Let's pretend one steak is not steak. What is it? Cucumbers. Chocolate. One steak is not steak. And let's see how much do you need of another item, such as cucumbers, to be able to tell the taste in that thing. When my wife makes food, she puts in 1 teaspoon of this and you taste it already. So a small amount is enough. You don't need a roiv. A small amount, whatever it is in another food. Why don't we say roiv? And the Gemara brings our Mishnah as a raya. Why are you treating two pieces of the same food, because they have the same flavor, differently than two pieces that are different flavors? How come they have different shiurim? Every time you come to a situation where they're the same, pretend one of them is not the same. And we see it in our Mishnah. It's not necessarily biyayin if blood got mixed with wine. We pretend one of them is a different thing. My love. So when we learned the Mishnah, we all thought, and I asked the Israelis because they speak Hebrew and it comes easy for them. I said, what's pshat in the Mishnah? They thought, like we explained, Roy Noisai Kilu Mayim. What's the Roy Noisai? We take the wine and we pretend the wine is like water. No, says the Gemara, you didn't understand Pshat. Lo, Roy Noisai Ladam Kilu Mayim. The blood, this is what we pretend is water. In other words, we go by roiv on the blood, not on the wine. Yachi, so says the Gemara. So why is the Mishnah even introduce the idea of roy and pretend? Don't pretend anything. It's called, what is that called? Batal mebayele. Yachi, batal. We're talking about a roy there, so it's batal, not royin. You have a situation. You have a bucket. Pretend this is a bucket right over here. And in the bucket, this bucket is tamei. I want to be toivel this bucket in the mikvah. And in the bucket I have white wine. Rather have white. There was white wine in the kitchen. I don't know why. White wine. White wine looks like water. And it's in this kli. And I want to dunk this kli in a mikvah. What do? Says Reb Yehuda, the idea of royin. What does royin mean? I pretend. By the way, what's the problem if there's white wine in this glass and I'm putting in the mikvah? What's the problem halachically?
It's not touching inside of the plate.
So what is that called? Chatzitza. It's called chatzitza. A problem with chatzitza. That's the rest of the sugya actually, if we're going to get to it. So it says Reb Yehuda, this white wine turns into red wine. Same trick that we do before. If it was red wine and it is diluted so that it looks like water, then the mikvah would be kosher. V'imlav pasel. So here you see that Reb Yehuda does do rayin. Says the Gemara, Tanoihi. It's actually machlokes Tanoim whether we use the idea of rayin, do we pretend. You have a bucket that has inside a white wine or milk. Here, he did a little, we don't really have time for this, but he has white wine in there, milk in there. Over here it says what? We don't do royin, we do a roiv. In other words, if, in this case, roiv is another liquid, so it wouldn't be good because most of this is full. But if it was below the half point, then it'll be okay. Do we do roiv or do we do royin? And Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shiur today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDYDaf.com.